that feeling. My mother's not a way public person. She doesn't have a platform. She doesn't go out there and talk to people. But in this little moment, we made this podcast, put it up there, a few people heard it, and she felt cool. She felt that feeling that, like, I've had my whole life, where I'm like, here, art. You know, I'm just putting it out there and doing self-expressing. My mother has come from a generation of self-expressors. They weren't encouraged to do that. They were encouraged to, like, get a job, fucking maybe go to college and get a better job, keep your head down, fucking, have 3 kids and the dog and the fence and the yard and all that shit. This generation, the millennials, I was just reading the New York Times, first generation in history of Americans where the parents are telling their children, do what makes you happy and figure out how to make money off of it. But they don't even say the second part that much. They get it at this point. Like, you said go to college and there's no guarantees of a job when you're done. The world is constantly changing, man, so you might as well fucking do something that makes you a little bit happy at the same time. Sit down, record a podcast. Sit down, start talking to people. Try it once. Just throw it up there, see what happens, man. And the only reason I suggest doing it is because weird things happen like this. Like, we got this whole side career now. He wound up making a movie without me, by himself, like voicing it and producing it. Brian Johnson, who's a friend of ours who's on Comic Book Men and stuff, great guy, does a podcast called Tell Him Steve Dave. Go ahead, he's going to take a lead. Tell him Steve Dave. See, once I start talking, it doesn't stop. Tell him Steve Dave. Before it existed as a podcast, Brian and Walter would come on Smodcast periodically at one of my shows, and they would chit-chat. We chit-chat about growing up and stuff in Jersey. And it was always, the episodes were always fun. People who listened to them, the feedback on Twitter was like, these guys are fucking hysterical and shit. And I would tell them all the time, record a podcast. You guys should be doing a podcast back east without me. And Walter is such a fucking defeatist and negative person at times. He was just like, nobody cares about us, dude. It's like, fucking, they like us because of you. If you're not around, they don't give a shit. I said, bullshit. I might introduce people to you, but I guarantee you, you're interesting enough to keep them around. You guys are fucking weird. So don't worry about fucking like, no, they don't like me because you. It's not fucking true. Now, Brian had some, and he's talked about it on the podcast, so I don't think I'm sharing, telling tales out of school. Brian had some problems with depression, big time. There was one point where Brian was just like, I got my foot on the stool. And the thing that, kind of kept him tethered to the real world was Sage, his niece. That was about it, though. That was the only thing that kind of kept him here. He'd say that from time to time. It'll creep you the fuck out. Because I love Brian Johnson. Brian Johnson is Randall, so I don't have a